Greetings, Packers fans. Aaron Nagler, along with Camille Davis and Carry the G and MKE, wrapping up the season after a brutal, disappointing, heartbreaking loss to the San Francisco 49ers. I could probably put that on tape and just
Yeah.
play it every couple of years if I needed to. Camille, how are you doing? We've had a day to kind of process, decompress, if you will, after another heartbreaking playoff loss. How you doing? What's your takeaway from, I'm not going to say embarrassment, but the letdown in San Francisco?
Letdown is the right word. It's a disappointment because the Packers had every opportunity to win that game. You enter into the fourth quarter, you're up by 7. Like you're feeling all right. I looked at my husband during the fourth quarter and I was like, I honestly did not expect to be this stressed about Packers football this year. But here we are. Like I'm
Here
at
we
that
are.
standing to watch the game, pacing around, can't
Mhm.
sit down type of energy. But it's disappointing in large part because, like I mentioned, they had opportunities, but also because I've gotten so attached to this particular Packers team after
Yes.
the ups and downs. Like it's disappointing not to see them play any more football.
Well, and that's the thing, right? The investment you have in this collection of guys, and as Matt pointed out in his post-game presser, they'll never be together again.
Yep.
Obviously the core group, such as it is, will most likely stick around and stay together for a while, but this kind of vibe, this team, this collection of talent will never be the same. And to have gone through what we went through with this team emotionally,
Yeah.
where, early November, we're talking about, oh, there's a potential top 10 pick, on the way. And then to see them turn around and have the run that they did and then kind of falter, but then pick it back up. We've been through kind of the grind with this team over the course of the season. And I'm with you. I'm going to really miss watching this team play football. It was infectious fun once they got going there at the end of the season, and not being able to have them complete that journey is upsetting. And I mean, look, they're all the caveats, right? Very young team. No one expected them to be there. The way that they kind of turned the season around, I think surprised everybody, probably including themselves. But the game itself is probably what's so frustrating because they had every opportunity to win that game. You mentioned missed opportunities, and this is a team that had taken advantage of opponents and their mistakes and their inabilities to capitalize on things in the past, like couple, 3, 4 games. And then you get to this game, and kind of what I had worried about was like the 49ers just being too good, right? Way too
Mhm.
talented and just overwhelming the Packers. And that just didn't happen. If anything, the Packers were the team that was in control for much of the game. They just couldn't, finally close the deal with too many of their own mistakes.
Yeah, and this game honestly was a great summary for how this season went. We've talked about them having a chance to be able to pass the test and they were failing. And then it's like, okay, now
Mm,
you're starting to pass it. Can you play with expectation? Not that they had many coming into this game. They were big underdogs,
right.
but they came in and they played a great game for 3 quarters. Really, the fourth quarter in particular is where things just really started to unravel for this young Packers team. And when you're trying to look at what happened in the game and what went wrong, it reminds me again of the season where a lot of times people want things in black and white. You want it to be very clear, like it's this
Yep.
and nothing else, it's
Yep.
this. But the reality of this season, this team, and life in general is that it's mostly great. It was a lot of different things that contributed to the Packers not winning, which again is part of what makes it disappointing. You got the 2 missed interception opportunities for Savage and Nixon, which could swung the game. Like the
Big
49ers
time.
had chances at interceptions and they didn't miss their chances. They won the turnover battle, and that's a huge part in the game. And last week against Dallas, they didn't miss their opportunities. They took advantage of every single one, from interceptions to their performance in the red zone, which again against San Francisco wasn't great. 2 of 5 in the red zone's not good enough.
Yeah.
And like it just that's what's so frustrating about it. Like it's all this gray. You're looking at, people want to point to the kicker alone, which Anders definitely deserves a
I mean,
conversation,
he's part of the conversation, but it's
but
not
it's
his
not it.
fault. No, he
Yeah,
didn't
it's
lose
not
the game for them in any way, shape, or form. No, no doubt. Although that is something that I think, to your point, like the being akin to the rest of the season, it's kind of akin to the Packers organization to have this issue that everyone can see.
yeah.
Everyone knew that the kicker was going to cost them probably in a big moment at some point, and lo and behold, that's exactly what happened. I mean, that was in their control prior to kickoff, but you look in at the things during the game. The red zone is interesting to me because I, remember the game being over and thinking, God, they missed so many opportunities in the red zone. And then something Matt said in his presser kind of struck me because, and he was spot on. talking about they got to the red zone and then they couldn't convert to get into goal to go situations because they've been so good in goal
Mhm.
to go situations all season long, right? All historically good. And you saw that kind of play out on the Tucker Craft touchdown, right? Like they have great things drawn up to get them into the end zone once they're in goal to go situations. But way too many times outside of the Bo Melton touchdown where they just went for it on the first snap, they were stymied on early downs, so they kept
Yeah,
getting it 3rd and long, right? And against that front, you're just in trouble. You they can rush 4 and they can cover, and in an area which is so condensed like the red
yep,
zone is, it just makes it exponentially more difficult. And you go back and watch that game, and that is spot on. Like, when you're in 3rd and 9 at the 18-yard line, you're in trouble against San Francisco. You've gotta get, some kinda chunk play down within, like, the 10 or something to get yourself into a goal to go where you've got a bunch of stuff drawn up that you can take advantage of, but they just couldn't get themselves into those positions. But when they did, they capitalized
absolutely, absolutely, and that's a credit to the San Francisco defense, right?
big
Like,
time,
to be
big
able to
time.
only rush 4 and provide that amount of pressure, and you saw it throughout the game as well, like, the Packers are a team that throughout the season, they've attacked the middle of the field, and you look at what the 49ers have in the middle of the
Oh,
field, and
yeah.
the Packers did not wanna test that too much, and you saw it throughout the game, not even just in the red zone, but just how they were distributing the ball, like, you didn't see Aaron Jones running up the middle too often, and when he did, he was normally stymied in that effort,
Yeah.
and you had to adjust how you play. But ironically enough, that adjustment, that's a strength of this Packers team attacking the middle of the field. So that was out, but they were still able to move the ball by attacking the boundaries, playing outside the tackle box, so on and so forth. But in the red zone, like you said, when everything is tighter and you just don't have as much room to operate, it became very, very clear like this is going to be a problem. And I know some people had a problem with LaFleur going for it on that 4th and 1 instead of kicking the field goal. And it's like, I get being upset, but the spot was bad. Like it was a
Spot was
bad spot.
terrible. Yeah.
So
I
like there's
mean,
only so much you can do when you feel like you converted something and then the refs say actually you didn't in this moment. And
yeah.
this isn't me blaming the refs for the performance of the Packers. Like
Nope.
I've never been a blame the refs type of person unless I can't look away from what the refs did. Like if they
Right.
had their hands in it that much, then I'm gonna have to say something. But generally, I'm not blaming the refs for anything. And while
I
the
mean, you
refs
had
missed
plenty
the
of
call,
opportunities to overcome those calls. You know what I mean? Like,
exactly, they missed some
plenty of
calls. They did,
opportunities.
but the Packers still could have won the game
Yeah.
regardless of such.
Exactly. I'm glad you mentioned Aaron Jones because he had been and has been, so kind of almost revolutionary as far as his reappearance in the offense and the way putting up 100 on everybody, including the 49ers. And yes, one of those was a 53-yarder, but the way they attacked the edges really surprised me just for how effective they were.
Yeah.
And finding that kind of way of working where they found that pitch play and had, the interior wide receiver, usually the 3, kind of crack down on the defensive end. They made some real hay there, and I will bet substantial amount of money that the Lions will probably follow suit. They'll take a look at that and go, "Oh yeah, there's something there." Because that you with the 49ers, you think you don't want to run sideline to sideline because their linebackers are so good and they're so rangy. But they did a really good job and busted that not only that 53-yarder, but a couple of other really big gains, especially off that right side, with kind of the same action. So that was a credit again to Matt LaFleur
Yeah.
finding something in the defense that he could take advantage of. Overall, you look at the game and you look at the missed opportunities. I mean, the one for me that you flip it around on the defensive side of the ball, you talked about the misinterceptions, which okay, those happen. It's really frustrating, but like there's so many missed tackles that
Yes.
reared its head again. Something you mentioned throughout this things happening throughout the season. Darnell Savage in the hole, opportunity to take McCaffrey down for a significant game, but you still got a chance to limit him to a field goal. Instead, completely whiffs on the tackle. I mean, that's the kind of play that got him benched last year. In fact, I remember the Tennessee game, the Thursday nighter, where he had a tackle almost exactly like that, or a missed tackle, and next week he was benched. Right?
Yeah.
It was all of the kind of worst case scenario stuff for a lot of these guys came to kind of rear its head, including Jordan Love. I mean, you
Yes.
can't look past that fourth quarter. That's a rough stretch for Jordan after being so hot for so many weeks. And I understand 49ers defense has something to do with that. No question about it. But man, he missed some what should have been pretty quote unquote easy. Nothing's easy in the NFL, but some, decent layups,
Yeah.
that he just missed, and that's something he's gotta wear, and it's hopefully something he works on because it seemed to happen every time he was off his spot, right? I mean, over the course of the last couple months when he's been so hot, he's been in the pocket. He's been able to rip things in rhythm or at least kind of fall back, but still things are kind of in line with how the play is drawn up. Most of these misses seem to come after he was off his spot, trying to get outside, trying to quote make something happen, and he just missed. He missed so many throws, and that really and it was noticeable just because he's been so hot for so long.
Exactly. And you like we talked about it. We were thinking initially like, hey, 2023 season is going to be the learning. We can't wait to
Right.
see what they can do next year when they might be able to make a playoff push.
Mhm.
And instead they did that at the second half of this season. They got really hot. Jordan Love arguably was the best quarterback in the league to end the season, like that last half stretch of the games there. So when you see him in this game against San Francisco, and it was funny watching it because I'm like, we're seeing early season Jordan Love and some
Big
of the
time.
decision making. I mean,
Yeah.
the last interception summed it up
Brutal.
for me,
Just
where you're
brutal.
looking when you see the film and you're like, there was nothing on that field for you to throw to, and yet
Nope.
and still you decided to throw across your body to the middle of
I mean, he
the
pulled a
field.
Brett Favre. He pulled a
Yes,
Brett Favre.
yes. It
And
was
we've talked
very
about it.
Brett
He's been more Favre than he's been Rodgers this year, I'll tell you that. And that one, wow. I mean, he went all in on the Favre comparison.
Favre.
Yeah, that's a brutal decision.
It
You
was.
can't
It's just
have.
one of those you can't make that decision there, and that's something that we saw earlier in the year in games like against the Raiders where you're like,
Yep.
you have more downs, you have timeouts, you don't
Yep.
have to force it, you can't get it all on one play here. So just cut your losses on this one and move on to the next one. And knowing what we know about Jordan Love so far this season, he's a guy who, he remains very stoic. He doesn't emote too much. He always
Yeah.
has that very
Right.
cool, calm personality, but that's burning him up inside. Like he wants to be great, and you
Yeah.
see the work that he puts in, you see the effort, you see how he's grown, and you hope that this is another springboard going into next year where you're like, you get to wear that. Like you said, he has to wear that. Some of the
Yep.
defenders have to wear what they did when their performance, the safeties. We talked about what we saw from Savage, but Owens also missed some very crucial tackles
Oh,
there
man, that
for the
one on
team.
Kittle is embarrassing, man.
Yes.
That is tough stuff.
Yeah.
And
And
again,
that's
that's
where
something that we saw earlier in the season, right? I mean, that's
exactly.
it's
Exactly.
yeah.
So it's like there are certain things in this game where it's like, as you say, like you have to wear it. You can't age it away or say like,
Mhm.
"Hey, well, we were underdogs." Like there are certain things in this game where it's like, "Okay, but you did this wrong and you have to own up to this piece of it."
Well, it's, funny we're talking about missed tackles because that leads us to the defense, right? And Joe Barry, which will be a discussion
Oh
point.
boy.
Who knows? I know Matt's set to talk in a little bit after we're done recording. I highly doubt he says anything of significance when it comes to Barry's kind of position and job status or whatever. But it is interesting to watch that game because you get all of the Joe Barry experience in that, like, especially it's so funny in the playoffs. He seems to find, stuff that works against the opponent, but in the moments that are most important, he just seems to revert back to Joe Barry. Like that final drive where they're playing this too high, soft ass shell, just allowing the 49ers to drive down the field. He may as well have been facing the Giants and Tommy DeVito, right? Like it was that style of defense all over again. Where that to me, that's the most important time to get after the quarterback. And if they bust a big one, fine. At least you're saving time and allowing your offense a little more time to operate. Like so, but then you flip it over and you're like, they did a pretty damn decent job
They
against
did.
that team and that offense that has marched up and down the field on people all year long, dropping 30 and 40 burgers. I mean, they had a number of 3 and outs. There were so many times where I was like, well, okay, we need to stop here. And they got the stop. The offense couldn't extend their lead in the second half, but Joe Barry, there were plenty of times where that defense really surprised me. And that's with I would say, kind of, not the greatest collection of talent, especially after Jair goes out. That's a tough one, man. I'm fascinated to see what Matt does here because look, would I keep Joe Barry around? Absolutely not. But it's not my call. I think there's a decent chance that that Barry is back.
There's a chance for it, for sure. And to your point, like, we've talked about the things that he's done wrong, and I definitely agree on that. The last drive the San Francisco 49ers offense had, because I was watching it and I'm like, okay, throughout the game, the Packers did a pretty good job of only rushing 4 and being able to still get pressure, which against San Francisco is your ideal way to try to beat them. That's what you saw the Ravens able to do, because for as many conversations as we've had about Brock Purdy, not just me and you, but just the general landscape of those who watch the NFL and arguing like, he's a system quarterback,
No,
he's not
right.
good. Like, no, he doesn't have big arm strength, but he's a smart guy.
Yeah.
And if you're going to rush more than 4 and you're going to leave guys single covered or whatever behind, he's just going to try to find the mismatch. Oh, you have a linebacker on Debo here. And I mean, the Packers got to go throughout this game without having to deal with
Debo.
Debo
Yeah.
for most of it. And I thought that overall they did a pretty good job being able to get pressure with their front 4 and then being able to drop into coverage. But the last drive, like, if you are going to try to go for it, this is a chance to be aggressive at this point, like you said, because worst case scenario is they score quickly and you have more time on the clock to try to march down the field yourself. Worst case scenario, they score and eat up a lot of time on the clock, and now you have to be in a 2-minute drill, or in this case for the Packers,
A
a
1-minute
1-minute
drill,
drill.
essentially.
So,
Right.
like, that's the Joe Barry experience where it's like the game plan was sound for most of the game, but in critical decision points, like, you just veered off in a way where it's like, I didn't agree with it. And by the time they did score, I looked at my husband and I was just like, I wish they could have scored a minute or 2 earlier.
I
Like, and it's
know.
weird to say that, but like, that's how I felt in that moment.
Well, because you want time to operate on offense,
Yeah.
and Matt not using his timeouts while they're on defense is just
Right.
bizarre to me. Like, what are you saving them for? I understand, like, you want to utilize them on offense, but you're gonna have, like, a minute left. Like, give yourself some time. The whole frustration kind of extends then to special teams as well because of the missed kick. You mentioned Carlson, but I will say, on the flip side, they had some really great performances on
They
special
did.
teams. Nixon's big return to set them up to score, even with the fumble. Shout out Eric Wilson. If they had
Yeah.
won that game, I think Eric Wilson probably would have got like a number of, I don't know, jersey orders from Packers fans. Pretty momentous occasion. But and then you have, I thought, some really great coverage throughout. As far as the punting and kicking units, and then you got a block kick, kind of
Yep.
returning the favor on what happened in Lambeau a couple years ago. But it was a really good day at the office for the special teams outside of a really important missed kick.
Yeah, again, reminds me of the defense, because that block kick, think about the time of the game where that came. It's right
Right.
before halftime.
Halftime, right? And
San
they're gonna get the
Francisco's
ball
up.
back.
Yeah, they're up
Yeah.
7-6 and they're getting the ball back. So you get a block kick, you go into halftime only down by 1. The defense comes out in that first drive and they force San Francisco on a 3 and out.
Yep.
And you're just like, wow, like, this could have been a big swing here in the
Yep.
game. The last
Exactly.
play in the second half and the first in the or the last play in the second quarter, first in the third quarter. And you're just like, we're in this. We have a chance. And again, outside the missed field goals, it was a pretty good day at the office for special teams. It's just that when you're boiling down to it and you're like, everyone else on this team, I shouldn't say everyone, mostly everyone else on this team who we've been looking to see grow and develop. We've seen it. We've seen it from the offensive skill position players. We've seen it from Jordan Love. We've seen it from some of the young defensive linemen
Yep.
on this team as well. But we didn't see that growth from the kicker position. And that's what's really disappointing as well, where it's like coming into the season when we drafted him in the 6th round, I was like, this is kind of strange to draft a kicker with this resume that he had in
Yeah, it
college.
wasn't great.
It
No.
wasn't in the
Yep.
6th round, and then you're okay, we're hoping that he develops through the year, we're hoping he develops, and yet and still, he continued to miss here, and that's what's so disappointing about it, because in the playoffs against great teams, your margin of error is very slim, and on the margins, the Packers just weren't good enough.
That's a perfect way to put it too, because it is the little things,
Yep.
and they come back, and especially in a game like this against a team that well coached and that talented, it's going to get you beat, and that's the most frustrating thing going into the offseason, knowing that you had that game in hand,
Yep.
and the Packers pretty much beat themselves. And it's not to take away from the 49ers because they're really good. Like I said, there's no doubt that's a really good team. The Packers were toe to toe that entire afternoon into the evening and just couldn't pull it out. Looking ahead to the off season here, w- I'm not going to ask like the big obvious ones because I think that will eat up most of the internet's time through the off season regarding like Bakhtiari and Jones and what have you. But where do you think they look as far as positions that they'll want to bolster? Because when you look at contracts as far as like Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon being up on his last year of his deal, and you look at what they need possibly on defense. Cornerback is almost always a need.
Oh, yeah,
Safety certainly
big
is an
one.
issue. Where do you think they'll probably put most of the, or not most of the resources, but where do you think it is the most important for them to look and kind of, bring the talent level up?
They gotta do that something with that safety position. Like, that's the one I'm always like, "This is my first one," where I'm like, "It's the safeties." And coming into the season, we knew that was a question mark
Yeah,
already,
right.
and we had 4 guys vying to, earn their playing time in
I
that
think we
role.
should have known when four guys could
Thank you.
never grab two spots, it was probably going to be an issue.
Thank you. So,
Fair
like,
point.
safety is one for sure for me, and, like, I'm also like linebacker, like, we can continue to try to bolster that up a little bit. I do like what we've seen from Quay. I like what McDuffie brought. I'm not sure what we're gonna do with
Campbell,
Devondre. Like,
yeah,
it's some question marks there, so I would love to see that get bolstered. Of course, cornerback, and the Packer way. Draft some more offensive linemen as well because you just kind of have to keep that going. We don't know what the future is going to hold for Bakhtiari at this point. Think we're
right,
going to be okay with Walker going forward, but you don't know what's going to happen there. And as we've seen, injuries can come very quickly, and we know how the Packers
absolutely,
value the linemen that can play multiple roles for that very reason. So that's definitely something to look into as well. And also running back, not because I don't want Aaron Jones to come back. I absolutely hope the Packers bring Jones back, but just have another guy behind him. I'm not sure if Dylan will be back. So we need,
right.
I think, another running back to come in as well. So those
I
will be
think they
my
need
positions.
they need someone who's a little bit more dynamic, right? So
Yep.
when you do have to spell Jones, or he inevitably spends time on the injured list, you got somebody who has a little bit more juice, because that to
Yeah.
me was like so glaring. Like AJ, I thought did a really nice job down the stretch,
Same.
and prior to getting injured, right? I thought they found a really good way of working with him, but the offense really changes when Aaron's not in there. Find someone who gives you some kind of explosion the way Jones does. No one's going to be Aaron Jones, but like that type of back,
You need it.
you need it. You absolutely, because you see how much it helps this offense.
Mhm.
Well, Camille, this has been phenomenal. Our first year out of the gate
Yeah.
here on Carry the G and MKE. As we head into the offseason, let the people know, because I know you're not stopping, you're not shutting down. You're creating all sorts of content around not just the Packers, but tons of other outlets and sports. Tell people where to find you.
For sure. And before I do that, I do want to take this time to say thank you for reaching out and for us putting this together because I made a joke after the Bucks lost to the Miami Heat last year in the playoffs, and I said, "Hey, I'm about to become the biggest, most knowledgeable Packers person that you know." As a joke, 'cause I was just, I can't believe we're out in the first round here,
Right.
and got this opportunity with Cheesehead TV, which has opened some doors as well.
Awesome.
Still figuring out how it's going to go, but you should see me doing some more work with the Pack a Day podcast going forward
Awesome.
as well. And in the meantime, in between time, you can catch me on Technical Foul podcast. It's a once a week podcast I do with 3 of my closest friends. We cover NFL, NBA, and pro wrestling. That's TECKNICAL. We record the show live every Tuesday, release it on Wednesday and all the audio platforms. And then Monday through Friday, I'll be around talking Milwaukee Bucks basketball with Locked On Bucks and my co-host Justin Garcia and Frank Madden. So still some sports going on here in Wisconsin to talk about. And I'll definitely be talking Bucks, and on Tech File, we'll remain talking about, the NFL season as it comes to a close, the Packers, and all of that good stuff as well.
Awesome. Camille, I can't thank you enough. And definitely we'll be checking you out on not only all those avenues, but everywhere you are on the internet. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.